Hi, this is Carrie Hummingbird, and this is Soul Nectar show that talks about all things essence, that connection to our highest selves, that which is bigger than us, however you like to define it. And we do that by talking about our stories, because that's the most effective way to learn, is to hear other people's stories about their own journeys. And today I'm really excited to have Dr. Deb Sandella with us. Welcome, Deb.
Hi, Carrie. Thank you for having me.
So Dr. Deb is a PhD and an RN, and she's the author of the #1 international bestseller, Goodbye, Hurt, and Pain, 7 Simple Steps to Health, Love, and Success. She is an award-winning psychotherapist, university professor, and the originator of the groundbreaking RIM method, that's RIM method, which is a heavily backed neuroscience tool proven to reduce stress and improve quality of life. She's been featured in the media, including USA Today, CBS, and CNN. She frequently shares the stage with Jack Canfield and is co-author of their Awakening Power meditation program. Her numerous professional awards include Outstanding Clinical Specialist, Research Excellence, and an EVVY Best Personal Growth Book Award. So yay, goodbyehurtandpain.com. So you check your email, you'll see the link to that. So thank you so much for being here with us on Soul Nectar Show. And I think you know a little bit about the show, but I always start by asking our guests to share just a story about their own connection to their essence and how that maybe led them to find their purpose, the thing that they came here to do.
Yes, yes, I have one of those stories.
I
So,
figured you did.
yes, it was back in 1995 when I was awakened in the middle of the night by my brother, who called to tell me that my dad had had a cardiac arrest, that he was in the hospital in ICU, his blood pressure was not holding, and even though they had given him every drug possible to get his blood pressure to hold, they did not think he could survive the night, and they wanted us to sign a no resuscitate agreement. And I started my career as a nurse, Carrie. So this is not unfamiliar territory, but this was personal, and I had a really different reaction where I got really angry that they even ask us, because they don't know who this man is. They don't know what an important person he is, not just to me, but to a whole community. And I said no. And so the next day when I flew to Kansas, I live in Colorado, I flew to Kansas and I walked into ICU. They said, well, sometime in the middle of the night, your dad's blood pressure started to hold. And I just realized I left out actually the most important part. As I hung up the phone, this is the part that was really revealing, is after I got that call from my brother, and I went to go back to bed knowing I would go see my dad tomorrow. So you already know the ending of the story now. But I suddenly had this spontaneous vision in my mind of watching him walk off to the horizon. And so his back is to me as he's walking off. And then there I am yelling and screaming how mad I am that he's leaving, because I'm just not ready. And then all of a sudden he pauses. And he turns and he looks at me, and I'll never forget the look in his face. He was a feisty little Italian, and this was this, calm, radiant face. And he said, "Oh, okay, babe. I didn't know you felt that way." And then it just disappeared. It dissipated. And in that moment, all my anger about what was happening it was like it just flowed out, and I felt a bit like a wet noodle, actually. And then my mind, because I was a PhD at the time, my mind said, well, this is all in my head, isn't it? But as you know, when I went the next day, he actually, his blood pressure had started to hold, and he ended up surviving that experience and lived 5 more years. That he and my mom said were really the very best years of their lives. Because it was, what happens when you have a second chance. It's like, wow, it's a new sight, new understanding of what is the essence of things. So for me, it changed my life. It changed my life personally and professionally. to think that he didn't really already know that I would want him to be around. It was like, well, how am I being in my life with the people I love? Because I was very busy. I
Yeah.
was working full time. I had children, married, all of that. And so, clearly I wasn't taking as much time with some of the people I love as I really wanted to. So that reoriented me. So I started reprioritizing in a different way. Professionally, what happened is at that time I was teaching. I was a traditional psychotherapist. And this experience, this vision, it just didn't compute. The whole scientifically in my head is like, oh my gosh, I'm all the time helping people, but it's not like this.
Yeah.
It's really different. So it set me on a course. It really redirected my whole professional life in the direction of understanding imagination. And it has taken me places I never would have guessed. I have witnessed people's healing that be so miraculous that I never could have created it as a human being. And so it has just changed my life in so many beneficial ways.
I love that. I love the whole story because it speaks to what I see a lot with people and with myself. My journey was a lot of years in psychotherapy. I shared with you, 20 years in psychotherapy from, early childhood abuse, like difficult periods, 0 to 5. And so right away was with a child psychologist. And, and the thing is like the trapped in your mind thing. I love that you said that because so many people, like myself included, when I started this journey, were trapped in my mind, trapped in the thinking and the thought tunnels, and not in my experience, like not thinking like the imagination or things that would appear to me were real, or like coincidences were like now I know are total synchronicity, like it's spirit talking to me, but before I didn't know that.
Yes.
So like talk a little bit about your journey to like, because you were a PhD, so you were
Right.
obviously a very mental kind of person, like
Yes.
like in your mind, in your thoughts, and you were into psychology, so you're into talking and thinking. So what was your journey to
Well,
get
what's
to this new
really
understanding?
interesting, you're correct that I had so many, let me tell you how many years of education.
You were
It's
too
like
smart.
fingers and toes counting. So, it was a lot. On the other hand, actually, my nature from the very beginning was to be intuitive and very tuned in to people and emotional. I was, came, as I mentioned, my dad was Italian, so I was half Italian, and it was a very emotional side, half of me. And so I had, in all of that analysis and thinking, I had begun to really distance from what my greatest gift is. Because my intellect is a gift. However, I would say it's not my most unique gift. That's, it's like the creative part of me is actually probably the greater unique part of me. And it had been shut down. And that was not, it was not vitalizing me. It's more draining when that happens. I think for all of us, if we're starting to live a life where we're actually pretending to be different than we actually, like what our true strength is, then it starts to drain. Now, on the other hand, all that education has really served where I've gone since then. It's just served it in a different way. It's provided so much knowledge and scientific understanding that has allowed my creative ability to be grounded and credible. And that's a great gift because instead of being either left brained or right brained, it's now whole brained. And that's really the kind of work that I do now is whole brain healing that is actually guided. The director is the right brain. However, the left brain is extremely important, or else we'd be a puddle on the floor. It's like we need everything we've been given.
I love I love, we need it. We do need everything we've been given. I love this. One of the things that I've always been creative. I've never shut down the creative aspect of my brain. I'm super grateful for that because in so many ways it saved me. Because it really balanced out, or it gave me a way to express the things that I was experiencing that were so frustrating that I couldn't figure out a way to process mentally. Like, even though I was going to psychotherapy like every single week and sitting there and talking about it, it wasn't getting better. It was just like, I don't understand. And it wasn't until I got like this shamanic healing, like 6 years ago, that it opened up everything. Some energy, like something shifted.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to eat. It's like this subtle energy body or the subconscious or whatever that is. Like some energy shifted out of my heart. And all of a sudden, all those years of therapy started making sense. Like they never made sense before. And then they started making sense.
Yes. Yes. Well, that's exactly right, because emotion is energy. And the function of emotion is actually the French meaning of emotion is to move through.
Yes.
So we're actually, what I have discovered in the last 20 years. So my first 20 years was as a traditional psychotherapist. That was even after I was educated. So I've had a few years under my belt. And so then the last 20 years where I've been really exploring the new way of helping people heal, that is whole brain, has really opened up an awareness of our organic emotional system. The same way our body will naturally heal, like when we have a cut, if we keep it clean, it naturally regrows. And our emotional system is like that too. We just have never looked at it that way. We always saw, because it's invisible, it's not a physical level, because it's invisible, we get really scared to death of emotion because it seems uncontrollable, it's invisible, we don't know what to do with it, so we try to think it to death. And it doesn't work. That really doesn't work, because the source of emotion actually is a body experience. So emotion happens in the neurological system and the brain in the body first before it takes the form of words.
Yes, and
So
they're actually proving that now, that the emotion comes first, and then the story about the emotion comes second to explain the
correct. Yes,
that's the dangerous part. So
it is.
I want to interject here, because this is actually, we're all put here for a reason. And I really resented my journey for a long time. But now I've got this big awareness of why I had that journey. So important, because here's the key that I discovered is that part of my thing was emotional, right? It was big emotional fluctuations. So my diagnoses, so to speak, in the clinical sense, was like manic depressive borderline personality. And what's that? That's all like emotional dysregulation. It's not being able to handle emotion, right?
Right.
And I realized the key to that, it was so interesting. It was a really kind of insidious, because the way I'm 48, so I will just give it that. Psychotherapy industry, I was 15 when I was really starting that process. So maybe they didn't know as much then as they know now.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So the thing is that I was trained when I was going to therapy that if I was feeling an emotion, I needed to look inside and find out what was wrong that was causing the emotion. Right. And so my whole training with my brain was feel something, go find out what's wrong. And that's not correct. In fact, some people are empathic, and when they're feeling something, it might not even be theirs. It could be in their family, which was what was happening a lot for me.
Happens a lot.
Because I had a lot of people that were repressing.
Yeah, children that are very empathic. It's not uncommon at all for that to happen. And actually, even I discovered that even when I was doing a lot of family therapy as a traditional therapist, it was so clear. And it's become more and more now that I'm doing the REM work, the direction I've taken it. Well, what's really clear now is I deal with it differently. I have a lot more tools to be able to help that become very clear, that actually the source is somewhere else.
Yeah. And that, and it's a skill, managing emotion is managing energy, and some
Mhm.
people have bigger energy channels than others, like
Right.
the capacity is bigger. And so there's new tools, like you need to be able to ground your energy, just like a house has grounding in its electrical system.
Right.
It's energy, it's electric,
Yeah.
you know? I
Right.
mean,
We're not all the same. I mean, even when I actually am a new grandmother and we were there and it's like, I remembered back to having infants and reading the book. And it's like how Brazelton talked about every baby's nervous system is unique to it. And some will startle at this, any little sound, and others don't startle at all. And it's not good or bad. One's not better or worse. It's just we're so different. So to learn how we are and what works with that. And for parents to appreciate that too is so important. And not just to make it bad. But I mean, this is where Freud gave emotion a real bad rap a long time ago.
yeah, some things get set in motion and it
Right,
causes.
it got said emotion that that our hidden feelings, or any feelings, that become obvious, are somehow associated with neurosis, and that was really too bad. He was brilliant in that he uncovered the subconscious, because that was huge, and it's still very, very important information. However, to make it only about monsters in the closet, that is unknown, has frightened people for centuries.
Well, then
And
they're afraid of their feelings and perceptions, but actually that's a doorway to such amazing information and insight about your subconscious and what it's trying to tell you by sending you that
right,
emotion and that feeling in your body. It's like saying, "Hey, I'm shouting at you and you're not listening,"
exactly,
you know?
that's
And
exactly
you're going,
right. Yeah,
like I don't.
right. Yeah, to make it wrong was really too bad. So, but we now get to make it right, and that, like you're saying, that emotion moves through us spontaneously. So emotion happens spontaneously. It's not thought. Thought we can control somewhat. I mean, we can have spontaneous thoughts, but when they're spontaneous thoughts, they're usually because they're connected to something on our right brain, in our right brain part, in our more intuitive sensing part of us. So that all that emotion, when it moves through, is to bring us information, and then to move on through and expire. But when it gets made up into something more or different or judged or tried to be hidden or stopped, or any of that suppressed, then it goes underground, and that's when it becomes a real problem.
It does, and because that was the source of a lot of my, I would say, my internal struggle, and I'm still detangling those structures because those structures got in place really early,
Right. It's a habit. It became a
Mhm.
habitual pattern. Neurologically, that you had a neurological pattern become habitual.
Yeah, and so you can unweave it, you can unwind it,
Yeah.
and you can bring love to it, and it just takes, it's layers of work, it's layers, but you can retrain yourself. But I think that, for me, I feel like part of that journey that I took was to be here at this moment where many of our really open children are coming out now. They're very sensitive, a lot more sensitive, open, intuitive young people that
Right.
are really needing the guidance of somebody who's kind of like, okay, no, it's not bad.
Right. And you're
The
not
emotion is
bad.
not
Yeah.
bad and you're not bad. And let's learn discernment, because
Right.
where did that come from? Is it yours? Or
Hmm.
did you pick up on something intuitively? Did you tap into an awareness of someone in your household or someone on the street or somewhere you went today and that you picked up on something?
It can be that, or it could be their own feeling.
It
Because
could be.
the feeling can come in, like particularly anger. We really misunderstand anger. Anger is a very healthy emotion if we understand what to do with it and what it needs. So it's very mobilizing. I think of it as our own personal security alarm. So when we feel angry, it means something's up. There's an alarm going off because anger is very intense. And so when there's an alarm that goes off, what do? You have to investigate to find out, is there an intruder or not? And if there's not an intruder, what's setting off the alarm? Is there a heat, setting it off or whatever? Well, similarly in our own system, when you get angry, it's time to investigate. Well, is there an intruder or not? Because it can be a false alarm. And or is there something in the way I'm looking at things, or I'm not setting boundaries, but it means there's something that wants attention. So we want to really take the time to look at it, not to assume that all anger means yes, we're in danger, because most are false alarms. Once we have the information, we know it's a false alarm, a misunderstanding, not looking at things clearly, whatever it is. And if we assume that all anger is a real danger, we will not develop trust in life. That's natural. Mm-hmm. And if we ignore alarms, we're leaving ourselves vulnerable to harm. So it's really important to understand that system of whatever feeling is coming in. It really is bringing us very important information.
It's important information. And I think a lot of people, the anger one is especially difficult because if a lot of people have had, I don't know, a lot. In my experience, and anyone who's kind of had early childhood stuff, the anger can be a really scary one to face in yourself, because probably you had somebody, a parent or somebody in your early life who, when they got angry, like some really scary bad things happened.
Right.
So you can develop like a fear of the anger and an aversion to anger. And that can lead you into like being a pleaser, to try to avoid being angry. And that just leads to more anger, because then you're not speaking your truth, So, I mean, I know this one really well.
You're exactly right, which actually leads into the technique that I've created, the REM technique, which stands for regenerating images in memory, because it is a very organic, simple way of using our body sensing and imagination to access what is the root cause of some issue or symptom or discomfort that we're experiencing. Like, what's the original root cause? Then we get a memory, we get an image, we get a thought, a feeling, and then we can actually work with it to regenerate it, because the nervous system is plastic, and just by remembering that experience or that time, it unlocks it. Once it's unlocked, we can regenerate it in an empowered way. And the nervous system, actually, again, this is neuroscience, the nervous system actually receives it as real experience. So that emotional memory is changed, and it's really changed. Your factual memory remains the same. That's different. It's a different location of the brain, area of the brain. But emotional memory is changed. So you now feel very differently, about yourself after that.
So I haven't used your method, but I'm resonating with everything you're saying. It's what I experienced is that by using whatever tools you use, there's lots of modalities, but to uncover that experience, that initial experience, and to, in such a way that what we call the agreement that you made comes out. So the belief that got planted comes out. And so I'll give you an example. So I did a constellations, which I don't know if everybody's aware of what constellations are, but I did a constellations with Gary Stewart, who's great, mm-hmm. And we did it's more of a subconscious movement, paying attention to the energy, very feminine process where you don't really know what's going to happen next, and you're just reading it, flowing and following. and it wasn't even mine. I was just there. And all of a sudden, some key things happened. And I was 1.5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And the first memory I have in my life. And where I was touching my stepfather's guitar, and he was very violent, and he came down to
Yes.
try to hit me.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I made the agreement that was happening, playing right out in front of me. It's not safe to play.
Right.
And I was like a life reversion. Like that, just
Like a rewind.
my
Yeah.
whole life. Like wow, I could see how that agreement, I knew that moment was significant, but I didn't know why.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it was there because of this experience, because of this playing out in front of me. It just like woke up inside me, and I knew it. And
Right.
since then, it feels neutral,
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I am familiar with constellation, and I would say that RIM is like similar to an internal constellation that your imagination creates without other
Oh,
people being involved. So there are some similarities
that's
um,
awesome.
of going back, of really uncovering what's here that created a misbelief, feelings that are unnecessary. And so once we do that, then first of all, just airing it out.
Just
It,
becoming aware of it.
yes,
And you
it's
can see
huge.
as an adult, you can see the ripple effect of it. And you can go, oh my gosh, that's amazing how that controlled my life.
Right. Yes, exactly. And that how was it true and it wasn't about you. You weren't being bad, you were being innocent, and what he did really had nothing to do with who you were as a person. And I mean, you get to really see the natural truths inherent in the situation, because we have so many of those experiences, and some of them are so innocuous, where something just happens because somebody has a feeling, nobody talks about it, and then it gets saved in our bodies, in our cellular memory, in this particular way that's not helpful. I actually had a client that was in her early 30s, and she wanted to get married and have children. She was doing very well professionally, but she had never done well with men. This was an area of vulnerability for her. So in her RIM session, her imagination all of a sudden brought up the image of her fifth grade cafeteria line. And she's like, I don't remember anything happening in the fifth grade cafeteria line. So she didn't even consciously remember what it was. So where she's standing there, and then all of a sudden, imagination again plays the story. All of a sudden, one of her classmates, a boy in fifth grade, walks up to her and says, "You're ugly." And, as a fifth grade girl, oh my God, we're so sensitive
Yeah.
about that. And fifth grade boys are really not sensitive. I've had a son, so I've seen what a fifth grade boy
Yeah,
goes
I've got
through.
2 of them.
Yeah. So, and it's very different. The girls and the boys in fifth grade are so different. It's a bit of a sensitive time. And so what happened, she said, because now we've opened up this memory. So the memory gets to be redone. So we created some safety. She brought in her mom to be with her so she could say what she needed to say to him. And so she spoke out loud to him as like, well, and this is a closed eye process. And so she said to him, well, that really hurt my feelings. Why did you do that? Just even being able to feel safe enough to speak up for yourself, that little bit can change everything, because now you're not just being a victim. You actually use your words for yourself. And so, but guess what he said? Since you have had 2 sons, what do you think he said in his response?
What did he well, he probably said, I don't know.
Well, that could have been true too. I don't know. That would be very
Or he
possible.
could have said, I like you.
Yeah, that's what he said. He said, well, he goes, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you. I did it because I like you. And so in that moment, her whole body memory got rewritten to that she is attractive to boys. So that it's like all of a sudden her image of herself is completely different. So she walked out looking so different. She walked out like a beautiful woman. She'd slumped in a bit frumpy, and then she walked out looking like a beautiful woman because she was attractive. But the way we carry our body and all that really influences the image of beauty we either radiate or don't radiate. It's not so much about our real physical appearance. So a couple months later, she met a man that she really liked. They started dating. They were engaged within a year. They now have 2 children. So it's like that the recovery of those innocuous moments that have left this imprint for years and years and years can really be changed. Just like in your story and this story, they can be changed very quickly and effectively. However, it's in a different way than talking about.
Yeah, the talking thing, I also realized along the way that a lot of the things that was challenging me in my framework,
Mm-hmm.
in my subconscious framework, were things that happened before I had words to express anything.
Right.
So I didn't have words. So there weren't like words embedded. There were
Sure.
feelings and there were
Right.
senses about things, but they weren't really words. So the talk therapy couldn't really ever get there because
Right.
there was no words at one to talk about how scared I was in my crib. Like there weren't words to talk about these things.
Right.
But in the subconscious, like a lot of the work I do is that I've done to heal myself is similar to what you're describing,
Yeah.
in the sense that it's all this sort of subconscious style imagery,
Right.
letting the mind speak to you
Right.
how it can,
Exactly.
how
That's
you can receive.
exactly right. So RIM, I don't consider RIM a therapy. It's a technique. And actually in the book, which I just happen to have here,
I love
Goodbye Hurt and Pain, 7 Simple Steps to Health, Love, and Success, that not only do you have a lot of real life stories about how quickly and effectively it can happen, so we begin to change our belief about what's possible. There's the neuroscience that tells you the grounding and credibility of why it works, even though it seems quite magical. And then there are activities that you can practice with yourself or with another friend, because it's not meant to be reserved just for therapy or just for people who are, hospitalized or having severe issues. This is about who we are in general, and that we can manage our emotions in ways that are organic and that we're resourced in ways we really have been ignoring and not aware of. And
It's so great is that I've studied in the Toltec tradition with a student of Don Miguel Ruiz, Heather
yes,
Ashamara. And she's a great teacher. She's embodied the wisdom from him. And they teach a lot of these things. These are ancient practices
right,
that are bringing back because the shamans understood this.
right,
And, they knew that this was happening and that we could, that we're the ones who are carrying our past around with us in our computer banks in our mind. And
right.
so we can actually change the past by changing the version of it that lives within us, right?
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
we're the only ones holding on to it in our memory
Right.
banks,
Exactly.
so
There's nobody there forcing anything anymore.
there's no like central database of the past that's stored
Right.
someplace outside of you. Like it's only
Exactly.
in you. So that's how you can change the past and change your whole life because it's only in you. So you can change that little tape that's running, by
Right.
doing these subconscious processes, and they call that recapitulation.
Yes, yeah, but it's similar. Regeneration, recapitulation. There's no doubt that there's this, and part of the reason it's all similar, and there are different ways, a lot of different methods of ways to do it, and that one's very ancient, is because it's organic. It's
It's
simple,
fluid.
it's organic, and so we're really not we're rediscovering in a contemporary level
Yes.
how our organic nature really is and how to work with it.
Well, we're evolving,
And we are definitely evolving too.
we're evolving, like understanding the chakras is an ancient tool, but now to learn how to, modulate the energy going through your chakras. A lot of what I teach clairvoyance is like, if you're getting too much information, just, shut down the camera aperture. You don't need to.
You don't have to have it wide open.
You don't need to mind everybody's business. You can mind your own. It's a lot easier.
Exactly. That's exactly. And I totally understand what you're saying, because as a psychotherapist, I became very aware of how there's this misunderstanding in general in our culture, like to be open is healthy and to be closed is not. Well, that's not accurate. To be healthy means to be flexible and adapt to what the situation is. And when there's danger, you close more. And when it's safe, then you open so that you can receive the goodness of life, and that you also can have boundaries to protect
boundaries.
yourself.
Thank you for saying that word. Okay, so now I'm going to say this little piece that I've been saying to people because it makes sense. I said, okay, my whole life, everyone said you have no boundaries, and nobody taught me how to get one.
Yes, right.
And now I know how to get one. It's like,
it's huge.
It's actually physical. Like it's tangible. It's the energy. So it's the space you can't see, but you can feel it. And when you're an empath,
right.
If you have a really big energy body or a really open field and you're able to perceive a whole lot of things at once, it's hard to tell where you stop and other people begin. Like it's very confusing. And so you do take everything personally because you don't know what's you and what's not you.
Right.
Yeah, no
that is exactly right. That some people who are more open, and even because I was, the reason I went in, and this is true for a lot of psychotherapists, the reason I went into mental health is because I was very empathic. And so I know just what you're talking about, that I also had to discover my boundaries of, where I start and where I end.
And some of that's cognitive. I mean, some of it's a cognitive decision, to not be the rescuer. There's some of that is a cognitive choice, but some of it's also just physically tangible. Like you can learn how to access you can learn how to feel and identify your frequency versus someone else's frequency. And that helps you know where you are. Like, which part is me?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, it does, because it goes back to the word that you used earlier of discernment. And so the problem where we get into trouble is when we assume that everything we feel is ours. So first of all, you realize, you set aside that assumption and you say, no, that's not accurate. And so now I need to discern, what is mine here and what is somebody else's. And sometimes it involves conversation to figure it out. To really talk with somebody, so that, and especially with the people we're close to, like who we live with, because that, we're very close proximity. There's a lot that's unspoken. So I've been married 37 years. So I've got a lot of experience of that, of really, allowing the boundary, a healthy boundary there.
And I think a lot of people that struggle in relationship too are, it's part of it is just that not knowing what's mine and what's yours. And how do I identify that? How do I discern it? And then how do I take care of myself to give myself space when I need space? And that it's okay.
That's what you need, right?
It's okay to get what you need.
Oh, it's more than okay.
It's important.
Imminent. Yeah, it's very essential. It's very, very important, or else we start to go without what we need, and then we start to lose our health, our sense of being healthy and feeling healthy. So it's very, very important. And of course, there's the whole learning of how to communicate, asking for what we need in a way that can be heard. I know I was working with a group, another group on Zoom a couple of weeks ago, and somebody was asking a question about, communicating with somebody. And, something that I learned so long ago, but it's still, I start to remind myself, is to communicate in such a way that this specific person can hear it. Well, it's not about whether I want to vent and what makes me feel better when I'm talking. Now, there are times where that's the purpose, but that's not in a relationship.
Right?
That's with a friend, so you're venting, or on paper so
Yeah. And if you
that you
want to
can get,
vent, you can,
yeah. If it's
well,
about venting and getting it out of your body, then that's great. Then be very aware, and that's not, should not be happening. And it's not a safe way to vent is in the relationship itself. You do that separate, and then once you've vented and you've taken the edge off, then you can communicate from a very different place where you'll be able to be heard. Otherwise, we won't be heard. We create a response, a resistance that won't allow us to be heard, and so that's not really effective in the long run.
yeah, just cycling back for a second to the energy of anger, to that energy of anger that people have. And I can feel it now when it's filling up my being. Like it's like, okay, cup's full. And
Yes,
now I know, okay, I need to go release that in a healthy
right,
way. So
exactly.
like I'll even like roar like a lion just because it just opens up the it's just energy. It doesn't need words. I don't put words to
Right,
that energy because I feel like putting words with that energy is causing more suffering in the world. And so I just release it without words and even release it into the earth or someplace, where it's getting mulched. And then when my being is clear, I can actually open my heart more and I'm
right.
ready to listen.
Right. So I just want to say that's not, I just would soften about putting words on it. So for you, that may be true because you had this pre-verbal part of you where was the original wounding. So that's very important. You've sorted that out. That's not true for everybody. So that for some people, it's really important to be able to put it into words. And once you put it into words and release it on paper, or you release it in
Yeah.
physical exercise or activity, or doing something, or writing it furiously on paper, that, yeah, exactly, that there is a charge, for a physical charge that gets released that's very, very important for our own health. And because what we know is from the research is when anger is suppressed, there's an association with autoimmune disease
Oh.
where the body turns on itself. Basically, when you hold in anger, you're turning the anger in on yourself. And that shows up in the research as an association with autoimmune disease. That doesn't mean everybody that gets angry a lot is going to have an autoimmune disease. It just means there's a higher relationship there, higher frequency. On the other end, the people who express aggressively have a correlation with coronary heart disease. So I talk about it as the sweet spot in the middle, which as you've already described it, as safe expression of the anger. That is really, really important and not to be ignored. We have a lot of illness that is stress-related illness, emotion-related illness, particularly in America. So it's a really important thing to be practicing and intentionally pursue.
It's super important. It's super important to get it out because it also clears things up and you have, I don't know, what I found is that it's like the veil peels back and then this whole other reality shows up and I'm like, oh, is that what you were saying? I
Right.
completely misunderstood. But
Exactly.
from the place of anger, I'm never going to hear someone clearly because I'm
Right.
in defense. I'm like defending
Totally.
myself and I'm like resisting and I don't want to be wrong or bad or to blame. And so I'm going to be like this. No, it's not me. But when the anger energy is released and it's just energy, all of a sudden the veil peels back and my heart is open and I can say, okay, tell me again. Tell me
Right.
again what you
Right.
said so I can hear you this time.
Exactly. That is exactly right. You described it beautifully because that's the way we find the deeper truths, which are organic and simple. Because we're reducing all of the ego coverage that we are born with. We're human. We're going to have ego, all of us. You
You're
can't
not
do
going to get rid
without
of
it.
it. I
Yeah,
already
yeah.
tried.
So don't make yourself wrong because you have ego. But it is very helpful to be recognizing when I'm more important about being right than understanding the truth or what's really
I
happening.
love that. More important being right than understanding what's happening.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So I know I want to honor your time with us, and thank you so much for sharing all of these insights. It feels really good. I have to just personally say that this feels really good to me to have this conversation with you, because it was kind of this internal process of discovery over the last 48 years. And then
Right.
talk to somebody who has a degree and it is like, yes, this is like
Yes,
validating, you know?
exactly. I totally understand. And actually, I really enjoyed hearing your story because it's like understanding at the very deepest levels, even with the symptoms that we call serious mental illness, that actually it's the same. That you're a living testament to that. So I enjoyed that. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, it emboldens me. I'm going to be getting out there, sharing the
Yes,
message. So
yes, absolutely. Oh, yeah, it's important you get out there. It is important for you and also important for all those that are going to hear you.
yeah, there's a lot of empaths who need to know you're not wrong for having feelings. It's okay.
Right.
It's actually a gift. It's a
Yes,
huge
it
gift.
is. It is a gift. And any gift overdone becomes a weakness, regardless of what it is, And so to have the have it in boundaries, to have a balance.
To have some skills for
Yeah,
processing it.
skills are important.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Skills, not
absolutely.
pills.
There you go.
So let me know and let our audience know what you'd like to share.
Yes, I have a like about a 20-minute guided meditation that comes from the Awakening Power product that I actually co-created with Jack Canfield of the Success Principles and Chicken Soup for the Soul. And so it's a very big program, and this is one meditation I pulled from it, and it's a really juicy one. And it is about discovering some block that we have that we're not seeing and aware of. So it's a guided meditation that helps us uncover what that is and actually helps us regenerate it.
Awesome. And a lot of the people on my show, this is like right up your alley. You understand this. And my encouragement is to share this video out with people that you know that are a little more left-brained and kind of mental processing, that
Right.
might be open to this dialogue, because Dr. Deb is obviously really good at explaining things in a grounded way that would help them understand what we're all doing here as light workers. And so share this
Right.
one, because this is a really good one to share out with people.
Yes,
Help us all understand and
absolutely.
speak the same language.
Absolutely. It's like we're on the bridge. The
We're on
bridge.
the same bridge.
Yeah, we're on the same bridge, and it's like it's good. So thank you for that, Carrie. Yes.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for being on the show. And I always end the broadcast with kisses. So here they come, everybody, because I love you guys so much. Mwah. We'll see you next week. Bye.